Welcome back and welcome to this CloudTrail demo where we're going to set up an organizational trail and configure it to log data for all accounts in our organization to S3 and CloudWatch logs. The first step is that you'll need to be logged into the IAM admin user of the management account of the organization. So as a reminder, this is the general account. To set up an organizational trail, you always need to be logged into the management account. To set up individual trails, you can do that locally inside each of your accounts, but it's always more efficient to use an organizational trail. Now, before we start the demonstration, I want to talk briefly about CloudTrail pricing. I'll make sure this link is in the lesson description, but essentially there is a fairly simple pricing structure to CloudTrail that you need to be aware of. Now, the 90 days history that's enabled by default in every AWS account, that's free. You don't get charged for that. It comes free by default with every AWS account. Now next, you have the ability to get one copy of management events free in every region in each AWS account. So that means creating one trail that's configured for management events in each region in each AWS account, and that comes for free. If you create any additional trails, so you get any additional copies of management events, then they're charged at $2 per 100,000 events. That won't apply to us in this demonstration, but you need to be aware of that if you're using this in production. Now, logging data events comes at a charge regardless of the number. So we're not going to enable data events for this demo lesson, but if you do enable it, then that comes at a charge of 10 cents per 100,000 events. And that's irrespective of how many trails you have. That's from the first time you're logging any data events, this charge applies. Now, what we'll be doing in this demo lesson is setting up an organizational trail, which will create a trail in every region, in every account inside the organization. But because we get one for free in every region, in every account, we won't incur any charges for the CloudTrail side of things. We will be charged for any S3 storage that we use. But S3 also comes with a free tier allocation for storage, which I don't expect us to breach. With that being said, let's get started and implement this solution. So to do that, we need to be logged in to the console UI, again in the management account of the organization. And then we need to move to the CloudTrail console. Now, if you've been here recently, it will be in the recently visited services. If not, just type CloudTrail in the Find Services box, and then open the CloudTrail console. Once you're at the console, you might see a screen like this. If you do, then you can just click on the hamburger menu on the left and then go ahead and click on Trails. Now, depending on when you're doing this demo, if you do see any warnings about a new or old console version, then just make sure that you select the new version so your console looks like what's on screen now. Now, once you're here, we need to create a trail. So go ahead and click on Create Trail. To create a trail, you're going to be asked for a few important pieces of information, the first of which is the trail name. Now, for trail name, we're going to use animals4life.org, so just go ahead and enter that. Now, by default, with this new UI version, when you create a trail, it's going to create it in all AWS regions in your account. If you're logged into the management account of the organization, as we are, you also have the ability to enable it for all regions in all accounts of your organization. So we're going to do that because this allows us to have one single logging location for all CloudTrail logs in all regions in all of our accounts. So go ahead and check this box. Now, by default, CloudTrail stores all of its logs in an S3 bucket, and when you're creating a trail, you have the ability to either create a new S3 bucket to use, or you can use an existing bucket. Now, we're going to go ahead and create a brand new bucket for this trail. Bucket names within S3 need to be globally unique, so it needs to be a unique name across all regions, across all AWS accounts. So we're going to call this bucket, we're going to start with CloudTrail, so type CloudTrail, and then a hyphen, and then animals for life, and then another hyphen, and then you'll need to put a random number. I'm going to use 9999. You'll need to pick something different from me and different from every other student doing this demo. So if you get an error about the bucket name being in use, you just need to change this random number. Now you're also able to specify if you want the log files stored in the S3 bucket to be encrypted. Now the way that this is done is using SSE-KMS encryption. This is something that we'll be covering elsewhere in the course, and for production usage this is something that you would definitely want to use. For this demonstration, to keep things simple, we're not going to be encrypting the log files, and so I want you to go ahead and untick this box. Now under additional options, you're able to select log file validation, so this adds an extra layer of security, which means that if any of the log files are tampered with, you have the ability to determine that. So this is a really useful feature if you're performing any account level audits. In most production situations, I do enable this, but you can also elect to have an SNS notification delivery, so every time log files are delivered into this S3 bucket, you can have a notification, again for production usage, or if you need to integrate this with any non-AWS systems, then this is often quite useful. But for this demonstration, we'll leave this one unchecked. Now you also have the ability, as well as storing these log files into S3, to store them in CloudWatch logs, and this gives you extra functionality because this allows you to perform searches, look at the logs from a historical context inside the CloudWatch logs user interface, as well as define event-driven processes. So you can configure CloudWatch logs to scan these CloudTrail logs, and in the event that any particular piece of text occurs in the logs, any API call, any actions by a user, you can generate an event which can invoke, for example, a Lambda function or spawn some other event-driven processing. And don't worry if you don't understand exactly what this means at this point. I'll be talking about all of this functionality in detail elsewhere in the course. Now for this demonstration, we are going to enable CloudTrail to put these logs into CloudWatch logs as well, so check this box. You can choose a log group name within CloudWatch logs for these CloudTrail logs. If you want to customize this, you can, but we're going to leave it as the default. Now, as with everything inside AWS, if a service is acting on our behalf, we need to give it the permissions to interact with other AWS services, and CloudTrail is no exception. We need to give CloudTrail the ability to interact with CloudWatch logs, and we do that using an IAM role. And don't worry, we'll be talking about IAM roles in detail elsewhere in the course. For this demonstration, just go ahead and select New, because we're going to create a new IAM role that will give CloudTrail the ability to enter data into CloudWatch logs. Now what we need to do is provide a role name, so go ahead and enter CloudTrail role for CloudWatch logs, and then an underscore, and then animals for life. The name doesn't really matter, but in production settings you'll want to make sure that you're able to determine what these roles are for, and so we'll use a standard naming format. Now if you expand policy document, you'll be able to see the exact policy document or IAM policy document that will be used to give this role the permissions to interact with CloudWatch logs. Now don't worry at this point if you don't fully understand policy documents. We'll be using them throughout the course, and over time you'll become much more comfortable with exactly how they're used. But at a high level, this policy document will be attached to this role, and this is what will give CloudTrail the ability to interact with CloudWatch logs. At this point, just scroll down. That's everything that we need to do. Go ahead and click on Next. Now at this point, you'll need to select what type of events you want this trail to log. You've got three different choices. The default is to log only management events, so this logs any events against the account or AWS resources. So things like starting or stopping an EC2 instance, creating or deleting an EBS volume, those type of things will be logged using management events. You've also got data events, and data events give you the ability to log any actions against things inside resources. So currently, CloudTrail does support a wide range of services for data event logging, so you can click on this drop down and see all of the services that it supports. Now for this demonstration, we won't be setting this up with data events initially because I'll be covering this elsewhere in the course. So go back to the top and uncheck data events. You also have the ability to log insight events, and these can identify any unusual activity, errors, or user behavior on your account. So this is especially useful from a security perspective. Now again, for this demonstration, we won't be logging any insight events. We're just going to log management events. For management events, you can further filter down to read or write or both, and optionally exclude KMS or RDS data API events. And I'll be talking about KMS elsewhere in the course. For this demo lesson, we're just going to go ahead and leave it as default, so make sure that read and write are checked. Once you've done that, go ahead and click on Next. On this screen, you just need to review everything. That all looks good, so go ahead and click on Create Trail. Now at this point, if you do get an error saying the S3 bucket already exists, you'll just need to choose a new bucket name. So click on Edit at the top, change the bucket name to something that's globally unique, and then just follow that process through again and create the trail. After a few moments, that trail will be created. It should say US East Northern Virginia as the home region. Even though you didn't get the option to select it because it's selected by default, it is a multi-region trail. And then finally, it is an organizational trail, which means that this trail is now logging any CloudTrail events from all regions in all accounts in this AWS organization. Now this isn't real time, and when you first enable it, it can take some time for anything to start to appear in either S3 or in CloudWatch logs. Now at this stage, what I recommend is that you pause the video and wait for 10 to 15 minutes before continuing, because the initial delivery of that first set of log files through to S3 can take some time. So pause the video, wait 10 to 15 minutes, and then you can resume. Then right-click this link under S3 bucket and open that in a new tab. Then go to that tab and you should start to see a folder structure being created inside the S3 bucket. So let's move down through this folder structure, starting with CloudTrail. Let's go to US East 1 and just keep going down through this folder structure. And in my case, I have quite a few of these log files which have been delivered already. So I'm going to pick one of them, the most recent, and just click on Open. Depending on the browser that you're using, you might have to download and then uncompress this file. Because I'm using Firefox, it can natively open the GZ compressed file and then automatically open the JSON log file inside it. So this is an example of a CloudTrail event. We're able to see the user identity that actually generates this event. In this case, it's me, I am admin. We're able to see the account ID that this event is for. We can see the event source, the event name, the region, the source IP address, the user agent, in this case, the console. All of the relevant information for this particular interaction with the AWS APIs are logged inside this CloudTrail event. Now don't worry if this doesn't make a lot of sense at this point. You're going to get a lot of opportunity to interact with this type of logging event as you do all of the various theory and practical lessons within the course. For now, I just want to highlight exactly what to expect with CloudTrail logs. Now, because we've enabled all of this logging information to also go into CloudWatch logs, we can take a look at that as well. So back at the CloudTrail console, if we just click on Services, and then type CloudWatch, wait for it to pop up, locate Logs underneath CloudWatch, and then open that in a new tab. Inside CloudWatch, on the left-hand menu, look for Logs and then Log Groups and open that. You might need to give this a short while to populate, but once it does, you should see a log group for the CloudTrail that you've just created. Go ahead and open that log group. Inside it, you'll see a number of log streams. Now, these log streams will start with your unique organizational code, so this will be different for you. Then there will be the account number of the account that it represents. Again, these will be different for you. And then there'll be the region name. Because I'm only interacting with the Northern Virginia region, currently the only ones that I see are for US East 1. Now, this particular account that I'm in, the general account of the organization, if I look at the ARN at the top, or Amazon Resource Name, if I look at the thing after US East 1 here, this number is my account number. So this is the account number of my general account. So if I look at the log streams, in my case, you'll be able to see that this account, so the general account, matches this particular log stream. You'll be able to do the same thing in your account. If you look for this account ID and then match it with one of the log streams, you'll be able to pull the logs for the general AWS account. So if I go inside this particular log stream, then as CloudTrail logs any activity in this account, all of that information will be populated into CloudWatch logs. And that's what I can see here. And if I expand one of these log entries, we'll see the same formatted CloudTrail event that I just showed you in my text editor. So the only difference when using CloudWatch logs is that the CloudTrail events also get entered into a log stream in a log group within CloudWatch logs. And as you can see here, the format looks very similar. Now, if we just return to the CloudTrail console, one last thing that I wanted to highlight, if you just expand the menu on the left, whether you enable a particular trail or not, you've always got access to the event history. And the event history stores a log of all CloudTrail events for the last 90 days for this particular account, even if you don't have a specific trail enabled. So this is standard functionality. What a trail allows you to do is customize exactly what happens to that data. So this area of the console, the event history, is always useful if you just want to go in and search for a particular event, maybe check who's logged onto the account recently, or look at exactly what the IAM admin user has been doing within this particular AWS account. The reason why we created a trail is to persistently store that data in S3 as well as put it into CloudWatch logs, which gives us that extra functionality. Now, with that being said, that is everything that I wanted to cover in this demo lesson. One thing that you do need to be aware of is that S3 as a service provides a certain amount of resource under the free tier that's available in every new AWS account, so you can store a certain amount of data in S3 free of charge. The problem with CloudTrail, and especially organizational trails, is they do generate quite a large number of requests, and there is also, in addition to space, there is a number of requests per month that are part of the free tier. Now, if you leave this CloudTrail enabled for the duration of your studies for the entire month, then it is possible that this will go slightly over the free tier allocation for requests within the S3 service. So you might see warnings that you're approaching a billable threshold, and you might even get a couple of cents of bill per month if you leave this enabled all the time. To avoid that, if you just go to Trails, open up the trail that you've created, and then just go ahead and click on Stop Logging. You'll need to confirm that by clicking on Stop Logging. And at that point, no logging will occur into the S3 bucket or into CloudWatch logs, and you won't experience those charges. Now, for any production usage, the low cost of this service means that you would normally leave it enabled in all situations. But to keep costs within the free tier for this course, you can, if required, just go ahead and stop the logging. If you don't mind a few cents per month of S3 charges for CloudTrail, then by all means, go ahead and leave it enabled. With that being said though, that's everything I wanted to cover in this demo lesson, so go ahead, complete the lesson, and then when you're ready, I look forward to you joining me in the next.